Hello. Thank you for joining me here today in my studio for the second to last Summer of Purpose uh, speaker series and Summer of Purpose program. Excuse me. Um, and I wanted to come and share with you today about balance, creativity, and life, and how I bring that into my studio space and some of the things, and share with you some of the thoughts and things that I've been picking up and learning too from all the wonderful discussions that we've been having with these wonderful women, with Lee Lubin and Leah Campbell-Badicher and Jen Merrill. And if you've missed any of those, they're all on my YouTube channel as well as on this Facebook feed. And there's been some wonderful gems in there. So I encourage you to take a look at those. And I want to just check in with you and find out, how has your summer been going? And have you had any ahas? Have there been any insights that you've had? I've had a few myself, and I shared a few of those last week from my fishing trip when I was able to go down to Cooper Landing, Alaska. And so today, just to jump off of that, if you have something that you'd like to share, please, if you're here live with me, great. If you're watching this secondhand, feel free to send me an email. I'd love to hear how your summer's been and if you've had any ahas, insights, and how the self-care and prioritizing yourself has been. I know that itself is a huge practice of creating the space and the time and really being able to check in with yourself and see what it is that is meaningful and heartfelt and touching and fulfilling for you. And so for me, one of the things is being able to spend time in my studio. And summer is sometimes more challenging with that in Alaska than one would think, just because we got to take advantage of being outside when we can, even though there's been a little bit more rain this summer. However, we get out anyway. And so I wanted to just walk you through a little bit in my studio here, where I get to be blessed to be able to create, to address some of our the balance things that the thoughts about bringing balance into our lives, using the physical well-being, emotional well-being, and spiritual growth and creative experimentation. So with the physical, I was going to start with just being able to slow down and come into the studio and make myself a cup of tea, and just taking the time to breathe. And this is the time where perhaps loosening up, doing a few little stretches, remembering from the discussion I had with Lee that anything counts. Just being able to stretch. I hadn't done that one yet today. I can feel that. And that's probably pretty important, if I'm going to be using my arms and shoulders today. So when creating, especially if I'm working on a larger piece, that probably would be very helpful to do that more often. And you maybe stop while I'm painting to do that. So just being able to move my body and stretch a little bit, come into more of a grounded state, checking like my emotional well-being. What are my thoughts going on in my head? And right now, of course, this is fairly, you may not know this is fairly new to me about sharing myself in this way. And it has been, that in itself has been such a huge growth and aha moments for me, of really being able to fall more into that, hey, this is me, and this is, being able to share that. And so for me, watching, being able to stay in my own being and self, and yet also opening my heart and sharing with everybody from my heart space, and not out of fear or all the other habitual, some programming that's in there that we're working on extracting. And so watching some of that as I'm moving into sharing my emotional state and my thoughts with you. And then the spiritual side. What does the spiritual side look like? Setting intentions from my heart of being able to not, one of the biggest things for me today was to not over plan, was to be in a space of allowing the flow of seeing where life took me. I have some ideas of things I wanted to share and talk about. However, letting it kind of unfold as we go here. And so one of the things that I like to do too, before I start working, and I like to share this with my open studio, and I have a quote that I shared earlier on that I share with some of my classes. I like to start with something that's inspirational. And I have this wonderful Julia Cameron book, Heart Steps, that is fun just to open randomly and read what Julia has to say for me and for whoever's with me in that space today. And so Julia today says, I am a listener with the ears of my soul. Listen with the ears of my heart. I am alert to the promptings of love. I respond to the call of love. I answer with faith to move out in love. I listen, am guided, and act upon that guidance with the conviction that good is unfolding through me and to me. It's like those insights are the things and the reminders that really help set in the intentions that I would like to have for my time in the studio, my time and reminding of how I would like to live my life for myself and for the people around me. And so there's also a little thing at the top I'm going to share from Rumi. Listen, make a way for yourself inside yourself. Stop looking in the other way of looking. New perspectives here. So I love the little tidbits and messages that we get from surrounding ourselves with things that inspire us and starting off that way. So one of the other things that I wanted to share is around really setting space. The other thing I was going to share too is like I had spoke about in one of my podcasts several weeks ago about talismans, and I have this old rough cut garnet chunk that garnets are very good for grounding. And so I thought this would be a perfect day to be able to carry that around with me in my pocket. So that's where I wanted to bring in some of this idea of, as Leah Campbell-Boucher of the art school and life, she's a master life coach and creativity artist, talks about is the non-rational and the rational, and how to live more in this non-rational realm and bringing that into our rational realm. And so what does that mean? Well, in our minds, we tend to poo-poo or not give credit to, hey, I'm going to carry this garnet around to give me that reminder of grounding myself. Or I think I talked about at one point having an animal or stuffed animal around, or whatever those things are that help inspire and uplift you. So this has been a fun little guy that I like to have sitting. It's a raven. It's actually a raven puppet. So I just found him very cute. And ravens are very spiritual creatures here in Alaska. And there's great info online about them if you'd like to look them up. And so surrounding ourselves with things that uplift us, but maybe don't make so much sense, to our rational mind, and that we want to discount. And so being able to, because we're so used to having everything be for a reason and be in this productivity mode. And so being able to look at using our imagination, I believe that's, using our imagination, moving into that realm is more of this non-rational, because this is where we can dream of things that don't make any sense, and yet they do at some level. And one of the things I wanted to share too is a quote or a little paragraph from Power Performance for Singers. This is the book. I actually started taking some singing lessons several months ago, and voice lessons, and that's been very insightful for me as well. Along the way, there's so much that I didn't even know about all that, about breathing and muscles, and anyway, that's a whole other story. So around imagery, this is how important imagery is in our lives, and around creativity, however, around anything and everything that we do. And so imagery uses the language of the body. Verbal language is only a symbolic representation of the experiences which occur at the level of senses. So, for example, as you imagine yourself moving, the groups of muscles involved in that action will move on a subliminal level. Meaning, when we imagine that, like if I wanted to create this wonderful painting, and I can just or imagine myself moving very relaxed, very grounded, very centered in a co-creative space, and allowing the flow coming through. And I could sit and do that with any event, whether I decided I was going to go sing for somebody, I could sit and use that as that image and create whatever those desires are. We visualize those for ourselves and what we want it, how we want it to look, and how we want it to feel. So imagery helps accelerate your learning process. So this is, for those people that need to bring in the rational way of thinking about things. When you imagine a new technical skill or a part of a new piece of music or anything that you're doing, the appropriate nerve impulses and pathways are used in the same way as they would be used in the actual performance. So the brain does not distinguish between your imagining of the new skill and your actually executing it. So in both activities, the information received by the brain is exactly the same. Therefore, if you combine the mental skill of imagery with the actual physical practice, you will accelerate the rate at which you learn. And I think we've talked, I don't know, I've heard about that and, throughout my life, using imagery, vision. However, how many of us really do that? And maybe you do. It was a great reminder for me to start using that tool more. And that is something that some of the teachers, the women that spoke with earlier on, brought that up as well. And about being able to imagine what kind of life that you want to have. If you want to be an artist, or if you want to be a chef, or if you want to be a great CEO, or whatever it is that you're doing, and whatever feels right for you, what your desires are, sit and imagine that, and imagine what that looks like. What does that feel like to you in your body? And sit with those. And then the other piece of this that I feel is important too is to have the emotion and the feeling, positive emotion attached to those. And then when we come out of this vision and this imagery practice, is to be able to let go so that we can allow being in the present moment to unfold and have it, whatever is happening, happen, and not be attached and grasping for that image. So there's that piece of, it's the paradox of imagining what it is we're wanting to create or do, and then letting go. And so that is something that I am dancing with, shall we say. And so I'm going to, right now, I want to just walk you through a little bit of an art practice that I do for warm up and just kind of getting into playing. I was being able to share a little bit of the practice here. And what does that look like for me as I'm moving through these, watching my thoughts and feelings and emotions? So I'm just going to walk through that. And then I wanted to share a couple of thoughts with you along the way too. So first thing I'm going to do is I have a blank canvas here. It's actually a wood panel that I've taped the edges of. And I've got my, I paint with caustic, which is a beeswax medium with a little bit of Damar resin in it. And so I've come in a little early so that I could plug it in my electric, and my I like to call it the hamburger helper skillet. And I am going to, I turned it on so that it would melt. And so now I'm going to just put a couple layers down to start with. And really, this is that whole thing of, this is part of the process. It's like it's easy to skip through. Sometimes the things that are just, part of a process, yet this is the feeling and being in the process. And the thing about this is it feels so good. It's just one of those things I just really enjoy. I could just continue layering with that. However, I only need a couple layers. And then I get to come over and I can choose if I want to add colors. And this, with beeswax painting, we use heat to fuse. So I am going to use my torch today, because who doesn't like a little fire now and then? And we're going to just fuse the layers there. I don't need to remelt the whole thing. I'm just going to lay it in a little bit there and get the layers to melt together. And so now I'm ready to let that set up for a sec. And you can see how quickly it sets up. So now I am ready to continue playing. And I was playing the other day with showing someone some different quick little techniques that I could do, and they're like, oh, I like those colors, and he happened to be still sitting here. So I'm going to just continue to play with these colors that are on here. And one of the thoughts that I wanted to share with you was I've been aware of this thought of why bother doing, like one of the things I really like to do is play with my photographs. And I have a lot of photographs, and then I like to play with them and manipulate them a little bit and turn them into their own art pieces of themselves. And then I get to have so many of them, and then I think, well, why am I doing this? What am I going to do with all these? And the same thing, I have that same thought every once in a while with making art. It's like, what's the point of creating all this art if it's just going to, sometimes just pile up or sit around or whatever the thought that might be that day. That might be a limiting thought. And I started thinking about, seeing how this thought would come in more and more and keep me very limited about moving forward and doing and working at all in, I'm getting into my painting here, into my process, and it just like stops me from doing anything. So whenever I hear that thought, I go back into, wait a minute, and remind myself that, if this feels good, and I enjoy this, then right then and there, that is worth it. That is why we do it. And that is all the reason that we need. We get so caught up in this idea of productivity that it needs to be something, or that there has to be a reason for something. And it's like, the reason is our soul, because it makes us feel good. And the rest you trust, and the rest will work out. So that's where that listening to our heart, what is that? What is our heart telling us, and how does it feel? And really coming back into that space of how does it feel? And I have to say, like right now, I'm just loving these colors. They're just kind of luscious, and being able to lay them down with, I'm going to do a little mix. I'm going to do a little color mixing here. Being able to lay them down with the heat and having the wax, it's just kind of it's a very satisfying, and there's no mistakes. It's all information. And it's like, oh, that looks kind of cool. So just playing a little bit along the way here, and I think I'm going to bring in a little bit. Oh, but maybe not the green I want. Let me grab a different green. I have a bucket down here. Ooh, let's see what this does. See, this is that point of where, I may have a little bit of an idea, but then really I don't. And then I just let go and see what follows. And I think I need to thin that out a little bit more. And perhaps I'm going to drop it. So this in itself is just so satisfying right here. Just the color mixing on the palette and how it feels. And the thing is with this is, like, I can cover this whole thing up and start over if I wanted to. a little bit. Oh, that's not going to work. Maybe a little of that, yeah. So the wonderful thing with encaustic is that it layers beautifully, and then if I wanted to, I could just put a whole another layer across the top and start over, or just I don't encourage people to do that, because I really think that there's a lot of good information that is right here in the layers. And so just continuing to build on that. And then after I get a layer down, I'm going to put another fuse on there. So I just make sure I don't have any paper towels around or anything, and then I can lay that down. And then I can, at this point, use my heat as more of a paintbrush if I wanted. If I wanted to really soften this area right in here, use that heat to move that around and create a little bit more movement. Soften that. Oop, I'm going to soften that guy too. Then I'm going to let that sit back up, and then I just continue on. And then you'll see it's still just a little bit warm. So this is about playing and relaxing and experimenting. And if you remember, one of the discussions we also had is that remembering that playing and experimenting is where we learn. Our brain is actually in a very receptive, need a little bit of mud there, very receptive spot when we are in the very open, creative space, more playful. So being able to find the play. And I want to cover up just a little bit more here, and then I'm going to do a little bit of mark making. So yeah, just continuing a little bit of play. I think, and like, I'm not sure I'm liking that right there, so I'm going to come in and put, see what this blue is like. Melt a little bit of piece of that. There we go. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to clean that brush off. I'm going to put another little dollop of white. I'm going to thin it out because I don't have to paint it with it so bright. I can just create more of a glaze, because maybe I don't want it. There's a little bit more white there. Maybe I want it just to be a little bit thinner, so I can just come in. In fact, I want it even thinner than that and create a little bit more of a glaze. That way you can still see what's happening. Remember I was talking about the layers. I like to work with the layers. Now we're going to come back and I'm going to add that blue back in. So this is a little bit how I work. I just play as I go and then create the layers. And this is that point of which people ask, well, how do you know when you're done sometimes? Or this is not the point, which that question comes up quite a bit. And this is about just checking in and how does it feel? It's like, I know that obviously there's a lot more layers here that I'd like to add and get to a place. And but for now, I'm going to let that sit for a sec. And then I'm going to I think I'm going to put a little bit of some mark making in. And I'm going to do it with some oil stick here. So I'm just following with my gut and heart and what that's saying. And I'm just going to put in a few lines. You can see I have a little bit of Okay. We had a little Wi-Fi snafu. So I'm just making some marks. We'll see what comes through. And I am going to just go with this one for now. This is an oil stick. So it's an RNF pigment stick, and it's got oil paint in it and a little bit of wax, and it's solvent free, and it comes in this awesome stick form, which I could just go directly like this. However, I like to use my finger and kind of rub it in this way. And the fun thing about it is it also will go right into all these little holes that happened naturally when painting with the wax. So I'm going to grab a little bit of this blending stick, because the blending stick will help this oil stick move around a little bit easier. Spread it around. And so I'm just going to cover a good portion of this whole thing, because there's a lot of little marks in there that will pop out. And then I'm going to wipe it away, and then I can continue on, and I'll add some more layers. Just like, that's what I love about this too. It's just like life, it's like we just can create layers every day and every moment, and remembering that we are different people each moment. I mean, as we learn and get new information, we're informed, changes us. And so remembering that even if we've read something or done something before, that if we do it again, it's going to be, it's like it's brand new, because we are new people in that moment. And these are things that I do believe, and yet I do tend to forget at times myself. And that's part of this practice of paying attention. So as I wipe this oil away, you can see where there's all these little lines that are left behind. I'll stop here in a second. You'll be able to get a closer look. And you can see I'm still pulling up a little bit of oil, but that's okay. I'm going to move this out of the way, because I'm going to do now another fuse on this. So I can continue, and I can make this more abstract, or I can continue on and maybe turn it into more of a landscape piece. It's like, I'll just play with it and see what comes. I wanted to give you just a little bit of a taste of what and how I work and play, and all the fun little things and tools that come in. And I look forward to doing some more sharing about this whole process with you as well along the way. However, for today, I'm just gonna, since I could spend a long time playing around with that, and so I'm going to stop with that today. And then just to follow up again about that they're new people. We are new people every day and all the time. And I want us, that if we have a hard day or hard moment, or we're stuck in negativity, is that remember to be kind and gentle and soft with ourselves. And as someone said recently to me, is to love ourselves enough to allow the discomfort too. And because there's days I come in here and I don't feel like, I'm not in a very creative space. And so sometimes it's just about the doing and moving along with that. And that it can, just doing it anyway, even if we don't feel like it, can help it shift and move. And sometimes maybe it doesn't, and that's okay. Stop and do something different. It's like, okay, time for a walk instead. This isn't happening today. And being able to listen to ourselves and give ourselves that space to know when something is working or not, and having it be okay. That's one of the other big things that has been sinking in for me recently too, is, I feel like The more that I do know sometimes, or the more I educate myself about certain things, I feel like I'm the supposed to know and make it easier. And it's like, no, it doesn't always happen that way. So I really want to encourage that space of being kind and gentle with yourself and having the negative or the uncomfortable, we'll say it doesn't have to be negative per se, the uncomfortable stuff be okay and be in that. And the other thing I wanted to say too is that when we accept what is, that doesn't mean we're accepting a bad situation. It means that we're accepting, and I think I mentioned this last week too, and I want to just touch on it a little bit more, is accepting what is in this moment. It doesn't mean we have to accept all this whole big conundrum of things that are happening, or if we have a diagnosis, or we have something that's really awful that happens to us. It doesn't mean you accept that whole thing. It means in this moment we accept. It's accepting one moment at a time, and then making choices from there, one choice at a time, and remembering that we have choice. And that is the other big key: is we have choice. Is we're not victims in things and what goes on in our minds. So I want to encourage everybody to get into playful mode today, or however often you can, and experiment and play and see what it is that you can play with. And let me know how your summer has been going. And is there anything that you're looking forward to bringing into the fall or the winter, or to the next phase of life, and being able to really play and be more accepting of how things are unfolding. And I wanted to double check that you're aware that next week, September, August 29th, I believe, Tuesday, is the last series day of our Summer of Purpose program. And I wanted to just check in with you then to see how things are going. And we'll see what else I have to share with you that day as I'm learning to play and be in the moment and be able to share different reminders with you. So thank you so much for joining me in my studio today. I hope that the things have been going well for you, and that you've had some ahas, and that you've had some space to take care of yourself and do some prioritizing of you. And so I wish you a wonderful week, and thank you so much for joining me here today. And thanks for joining, Lori. I hear that you're with me. And thank you to my wonderful, supportive husband, Jeff, for being my videographer today. And because you know what, we all need help and support. And the more we have, is just extremely grateful for all the help that I have, and for all those who are participating and listening. So thank you so much for being with me today. And I look forward to seeing you next week.